Welcome to Acsense and Okta's webinar. We're going to be discussing how to achieve fully resilient and uninterrupted business operations using Okta plus Acsense. Welcome everyone, and thank you Aakash and Muli for joining us today. Before we get started, just a quick overview. This is for IT managers, CISOs, security professionals, and business continuity planners. So there should be something for everyone. As we mentioned, Muli is Acsense co-founder and CEO, and Aakash Chandhoke, hope I pronounced that correctly, Senior Product Manager at Okta. So thank you again for joining us today. Aakash, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Brendan. Hi, everyone. My name is Aakash Chandhoke. I'm on the product team for resiliency and scale at Okta. Super excited to be here today with Brendan and Muli to talk about how do we build a highly resilient Okta deployment. We keep seeing this concern come up over and over from all of our customers, and it's top of mind for them, especially given and read and all these things that are going on in the market today. We really want to talk to you. How can you make your Okta deployment bulletproof? Before we further dive into how Acsense plays a critical role in that, I wanted to just set some context on how Okta plays a key role and how we're integral to that story. So organizations are facing a difficult dilemma today. There's pressure to cut costs, deliver operational excellence, all the while protecting the organization from bad actors. And this is where Okta comes in and starts with our commitment to your identity security by providing a unified identity platform and best-of-breed solution in the identity landscape. So with access management and the mission to protect every resource, every device, every person, anywhere. We then layer on identity governance to ensure a user has the right level of access from the moment they join an organization to their last day. And finally, with privileged access management, we make sure that access to sensitive resources is only available to those that absolutely require it. And then we augment all this value with our Okta integration network, which reduces the time to value for organizations by basically offering you plug and play integrations so you can get started and start provisioning access to your users. If you go on to the next slide, you may be wondering, why is identity security important? Because identity is mission critical security infrastructure. At Okta, we understand that we become the first line of defense for your organization. And so when identity is under attack or unavailable, right, your productivity tanks, your revenue drops, your brand image takes a black eye. Obviously, we don't want any of that. And ultimately, that starts to impact the trust across the entire value chain and introduces potentially even further downstream ramifications, legal ramifications, compliance ramifications. Because we are mission critical infrastructure and customers rely on us to protect and manage access to their most critical applications and data, we built our platform based off of three key building blocks. If you go to the next slide, Brendan, those three key building blocks are: it's always on, it's secure by design, and it's built for scale. What does that mean? So for always on, identity needs to be extremely resilient and reliable. Since 2018, we have not gone below 99.99 uptime, all while handling billions of authentications on a monthly basis. Secure by design means the service should be more secure than anything you can build and operate on your own. And it should also adhere to compliance requirements based on geography and industry. So that's why we have security built in at every stack of our layer, from our secure software development lifecycle all the way up to our tools and multi-layer encryption. Earlier this year, in the month of January, we protected our customers from more than 2 billion security attacks. And then lastly, the service obviously needs to be built for scale. When you're handling identity for millions of users and thousands of customers, you need to be able to grow with them and grow with their demand. And so we've built a service that can seamlessly scale up and down to handle any authorization and authentication requirement. You may be wondering, how does Okta succeed in these building blocks? We'll actually talk about that in our fault-tolerant architecture here in the next slide. That is really the key and underappreciated enabler of this building block that I just talked about. So this is like a high-level overview of how we've architected our app. We've implemented what's known as cell-based architecture. This basically means is that within any AWS region, we have our services deployed across 3 availability zones. And all 3 availability zones can handle traffic to customers if 1 or 2 go down. In this instance, you're seeing that 2 app servers are in the red. They're not able to process requests for whatever reason. The last set of app servers in that last availability zone can handle all the traffic for that entire region to serve all those customers that are based out of that region. Now, some of you may be wondering, okay, great. That's wonderful that Okta has an active deployment within an AWS region. But what happens when AWS region goes down due to some disaster, like there's a meteorite strike, some other national disaster? And to address that scenario, we have 2 levels of protection. So Brandon, if you go on to the next slide, all our customers get standard DR out of the box, which basically fails over their organization from the primary region to the DR region within 1 hour. And for customers that need higher availability and faster failover, we offer what's known as enhanced disaster recovery. That basically takes down that 1 hour failover time to 5 minutes of Okta identifying and triggering the failover. The other key differentiator is for enhanced DR, customers can request only certain organizations be failed over, whereas standard DR is more of a, hey, we need to fail over entire cells that's impacting lots of customers. Regardless of which level is right for you, both failovers provide read-only access to make sure that core authentication capabilities continue to work, right? That's what we aim to strive for when there is actually a disaster. We want to make sure disruption to operations is minimized. From a security standpoint, what's really important is that we continue to issue new refresh tokens. So we're not using stale data that could potentially be used in a malicious way to gain access to your organization by bad actors, where we continuously will refresh and issue new refresh tokens for users. And then read-write access will be restored for 24 hours for both standard and enhanced disaster recovery. The RPO, the recovery point objective of both offerings, is also 1 hour. So what this basically means is like, how much data loss can you expect? We do what's known as asynchronous replication between our primary and DR cell. But in practice, we've basically seen that it's real-time replication. And so that's an overview of what Okta does to ensure that from how we've built the platform, how we've architected our services, and some of the offerings that we do offer for customers that are either okay with what we provide out of the box or want to purchase that additional protection, how Okta plays a role in kind of building that highly resilient SaaS platform. I'm going to hand it off to Muli now, who's going to actually talk about how Acsense builds additional capabilities on top of this to provide even more protection from certain use cases that today Okta does not really have.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Aakash, for overview. Indeed, Aakash mentioned the robust availability of the infrastructure, which is something that we all rely on and we all need in that specific service that they provide. We're going to speak is how Acsense can complement the steps that has not providing yet in order to enhance the availability of the infrastructure in certain use cases that the customer should take more responsibility at. Acsense is a 3-year-old company built by veterans and experienced business continuity and disaster recovery experts from EMC, formerly the largest vendor for storage, backup, and disaster recovery solutions that was merging to Dell, with also former value-added reseller for Okta for many years in the MEA region. And that's how the team get to understand the problem and provide the value of resilience for such a critical system like identity and access management. So Aakash was speaking about how Okta takes responsibility over the security and availability of the platform. Nevertheless, the customer has responsibility of whatever he's done within the platform. If it's uploading data, if it's making changes to configuration, and the way that he protects, for example, passwords, all of these actions being done with the platform are the customer responsibility. At the moment, there are no tools available to provide a way to help the customer answer and being able to be responsive and responsible for whatever he's doing with the platform. If we're talking about the settings that are being done into the platform, configuration changes, all the architecture of groups, assignments, policies, security policies, actions that he's doing, changes that he's making into the system are very critical to the overall business operations. Acsense is playing in that field. You can go to the next slide. We'll try to merge between the two needs and use cases that are very abundant at the moment in the market in order to provide resilience against them. The first use case, and maybe the one that everybody is concerned about, is a cyber attack. Just a moment, Brandon, let me do some overview. A cyber attack today, in a very simple phishing social engineering way, and usually targeting an Okta admin. If an Okta admin is breached, the ability of the attacker to make any change in the system is easy. He might try to get super admin credentials or be able to get super admin credentials, and also make changes to the roles of other super admins, like demoting them, In this case, this attacker may go from simple changes to the system, like adding an IDP, adding new users, changing attributes, or alike on security policies, up to a full ransomware of the tenants, taking full control over that. The other use case is more operational one. Fat fingers, misconfiguration, errors where the system has been affected and the business continuity has been breached. In both cases, Acsense tried to solve the challenge by providing a system that can respond to business continuity issues and also provide disaster recovery in cases where the data was compromised in any way. And by that, being compliant and taking the responsibility of the customer for business continuity and disaster recovery compliance, which is at the moment, regulators are highly involved in. We have seen 2 compliance regulations coming, one in Europe called DORA and one US NIST, adding the requirement of being able to recover your tenants as a part of the overall cyber responsibility of the customer. We'll run through the various features that Acsense has, and we'll speak about how we can solve all those use cases. Acsense deals with the data. Acsense complements the data continuity of the customer. This continuous data protection service is an innovative way in order to protect SaaS platforms. We had to reinvent backup as a whole in order to provide real-time, 24/7, 365 days a week, relevant SaaS protection, especially for Okta. Acsense bring Okta data into our platform. Our platform is a fully managed service to protect the data. Every 10 minutes, which is our return point objective, every 10 minutes we stream all the logs into Acsense. We are actually mirroring Okta into our own database. This database allows you to search, investigate, view, and also find quickly issues like misconfiguration or changes, and be able to either recover deleted items or undo misconfigurations in a click of a button. Next, the data we store is searchable and easy to investigate with. Our tool allows you to go through any point in time for the history of the system, or at least the history where you onboarded to Acsense, and identify changes within those points in time. The changes are aggregated per object, but can also be investigated through the history of each object by itself. And I'll show you an example later on. This capability allows us to actually generate any report that can answer any audit request as an evidence, and including the timestamp from Okta. And that's very useful in case of a SOX audit, Solvency audit, or a SOC 2 Type 2 audit encounter or require this kind of payment. Our robust disaster readiness tool is, again, a way to recover from a dot account lockout. It might cause because by a ransom of your Okta, meaning somebody actually took over your Okta tenant, or in case of accidental deletion of the entire tenant. In this case, Acsense allow a customer to onboard a secondary production tenant. This production tenant is in a standby mode, meaning it is not accessible to the end users. Acsense will replicate the entire production tenant to the standby and provide sync between them with an RPO of 20 minutes. 20 minutes from a change happening in your production will immediately appear in your standby tenant. The main use case here is for large enterprises where huge amount of data exists in your production. To actually replicate or rebuild this data, even if the production tenant is available, will take days. The amount of connections and interconnections between objects in Okta may go to millions. Write limits within Okta API. In this case, we offer the customer the ability to fail over from the production to a standby tenant. It will then provide the entire configuration as existed in the production, but of course, enforce some manual steps like reactivating the users and actually rerouting the service providers. In this case, a disaster recovery plan of the customer should be available, where he prioritizes top application that needs to be failed over, And in this case, they will be done manually onto the standby tenant. Acsense is actually working on a fully automated disaster recovery plan, which we introduced by the end of the year. Last but not least, we feel that data management within Okta is something that most Okta customers feel uncomfortable with, mostly being advised to use automation tools and workflow tools like that exists in the market. Acsense is providing a unique configuration management tool, which at the moment allows the customer to actually download this full configuration, compare between configuration postures of different accounts, and in the next future, be able to actually deploy changes from a specific test environment to production. This is something that we're planning also to introduce in the next couple of months, and I'll show part of it in the demo. Acsense is built to provide not only ability to actually do recovery to your data within Okta, it's actually to hand over or serve as a dashboard to the overall company resilience. As we can see here in the demo, we have three main objects that can monitor in real time the actual resilience of the environment. On the left side, we see the information regarding the communication between your production tenant and our Acsense managed data protection service. From the middle, we can see how Acsense actually treats the data that is maintained within Acsense. And on the right side, this is the resilience hub, where we are actually providing information about the communication between Acsense and the secondary tenant. Back to the first one, what we can see here is, first of all, the status of the connection. We can see here the last sync of information, what is the intermediate RPOs, and whether a retention is infinite or limited. That depends, configurable by the customer. This communication allows us to provide a full inventory of your Okta tenant, presented per object type with the last updated timestamp, which means that if you take a look on a specific object type, you can see what was the last change. All in all, what we gather is the Okta events, and specifically show Okta events that happens through the entire operations of the system. We have no limitations of 90 days, and we actually extract the events that have had a posture change on your Okta tenant. If we get a specific change, we can see the timestamp, we can see who made the change, we can see more information if that change was part of a bigger automatic process. We can see the change type and whatever objects that were related to that change or affected by it. For example, that's a removal of a member identity from a group. So we'll see the group name, the member name, and the connection between the group and the member. For each change, we also provide a full JSON that we get from Okta. So in case of requirement, if that's required, you can also download it from here. And in specific, and the customer can actually do a quick undo by clicking this button. Some of the changes filtered into what we call a recycle bin, which includes everything that was deleted or removed from Okta. If a deletion that Alex made to a user called Adrian happened, so you can quickly find this deletion and check undo. That will allow you to recover the object, for example, the user, or the object with the entire related entities that were connected to it, for example, application or groups.
Emily, question for you, just going back a little bit on the backup portion, where are those backups stored, and does the customer have the option to change what kind of backups are taken, like incremental? I'm assuming the initial backup is like a full backup, but after that, are there different backup strategies that they can employ?
Great question. The data is actually streamed into our service. The service is hosted by AWS. Our service is for 2 years already SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, and it's also ISO 27001 compliant. Security was built with security in mind. The data is streamed continuously And a customer can ask, configure different RPO or retention time, and thus we will maintain different amount of data. Customer can also identify specific PIIs that they don't want to maintain in the backup as part of GDPR or any other privacy issue. So we can actually remove some of the data outside of the backup perimeter, so it would be also compliant.
Oh, and actually, Muli, one more question I thought of for the recycle bin. Are there only certain objects you can do a recycle bin on, or does it apply to pretty much anything within an Okta organization?
So from Acsense perspective, any object that was deleted can be recovered, can be covered also as a bulk. Everything is available, both from an object perspective and related entity perspective. Related to your question, Acsense also makes sure that if you want to recover something, it will be recovered, and we do it in advance. We're doing what we call constant background recovery checks, and which actually check the integrity of the data that we preserve for you. These timestamps of recovery checks are written here and provided as a report for you, so you can also use it as an evidence to having a backup tests, and that happens almost every week. In this test, we are validating that we can actually write those objects into an Okta tenant. We provide an error list of objects that we could not recover. This error list usually related to some missing fields that are available in the UI, but are not available to be recovered with API, and some rules that may be broken within Okta. Customer needs to check and find out what are the issues in order for these objects to be actually recovered. Or some examples can be groups or rules that are inactive. Inactive rules can't be recovered because they're in an inactive state. Customer needs to make sure that these rules are required for him. And of course, we provide, in this case, the return time objective, how long it took us to fully recreate the tenant in our own background system. And this is not a simulation, this is a real recovery of the full system. This is only a view about the last recovery test that we did to the tenant, but actually you have in your Acsense log, the full activity log. This activity log holds all the recoverability tests that we have done to the tenant. The customer may just, upon request of an external audit, just send this report, download and send the report to the actual auditor.
Maybe before we wrap up here, a couple questions from customers that come up, and maybe we can cover those quickly as a last item. One of the main questions that comes up is, do customers need to pay for their standby tenant with
the pre-sale and customer success team actually can answer that? The way that we are utilizing the secondary tenant is by transferring the data in a stage status. So the users are not active and they cannot actually access this tenant. So it's a secondary tenant that it is connected to your overall account in Okta. So if under your account in Okta, you will have two production tenants, but the overall account will not bear additional effort. With the help of Okta sales, tag this tenant as a redundant tenant, and from business perspective, they will not charge for double usernames that they call in the system.
Awesome. And then last one, can you quickly run through the onboarding process? Do you help with training, planning for D-Day? Can you just run us through that quickly?
The initial process is very simple. You can connect to Acsense either to forward an application or using a least privilege access token, which we're gradually advising customers to replace. Initial backup process may take a couple of hours. It is a full scan of the entire API of Okta, where we actually create a baseline for the backups. Following successful completion of that phase, we will start collecting what we call the log basing, which happens every 10 minutes. Customer will get a notification if that sync is broken somehow and it's being connected, but usually we can see problems there. For operational side, we offer an on-job training with the customers system, as you saw before. The integration to SIEM is as you do to any other application. the business continuity parts. So for the business continuity parts, we have special partners, which we are starting to deploy campaigns for specific services around business continuity for IAM, where we focus on the IAM resilience. We customize it to the customer requirements and the overall BCP program. From a practical point of view, the deliverable of this advisory service is an actual disaster recovery procedure. And this procedure should be active in a case of a disaster in order to make sure that the people are trained and aware and educated about how to effectively operate our system in a disaster. We have a consulting services, which is DR training or DR drills, where we conduct quarter or annually a file drill with the client in order to make sure that he actually knows how to fail over for a disaster recovery site. He knows how to reconnect applications, something that usually we do once in the lifetime in Okta, but here you need to do it again. And that's something that is also available.
As we wrap up, if any of you are watching, if you see this webinar later, please take us up on our free recycle bin promotion specifically for viewers of this webinar. Otherwise, thank you so much. Hope you guys enjoyed it and take care.